Well, this morning, open up your Bibles to 2 Thessalonians. If you've been here for a few weeks, you know that we're making our way through Paul's letters. And each Sunday, we're just trying to tackle one a week. We're trying to take away one key teaching point that Paul makes. And we've titled the series, The Lost Art of Letter Writing, because who really writes letters anymore? And as we come to his letter to the church in Thessalonica, he writes about work. He writes about our jobs. He gets in your kitchen about work. And so I've titled this morning's message, Taking Back Monday, because I think we have too low a view of Monday through Friday. So let's read 2 Thessalonians. I'll start in chapter 3, verse 6. Stay away from all believers who live idle lives. Ouch, that's a harsh warning coming out of the gates about lazy people. And don't follow the tradition they receive from us. For you know that you ought to imitate us. We were not idle when we were with you. We never accepted food without anyone paying for it. We worked hard day and night, underline that, so we would not be a burden to any of you. Verse 9, we certainly had the right to ask you to feed us, but we wanted to give you an example to follow. Even while we were with you, we gave you this command: those unwilling to work will not get to eat. It's that simple. Verse 11, yet we hear that some of you are living idle lives, refusing to work, and meddling in other people's business. We command such people and urge them in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and work to earn their own living. And verse 13, and the rest of you, brothers and sisters, never get tired of doing good. So here's where I'll start. He talks about people who are not working hard. They're kind of lazy. And here's the trouble. Maybe it wasn't much different than when Paul wrote this, is that in our culture, in our society, if we think about it, we have a pretty low view of work. We treat work as though it's a curse. We look at work as though it's the albatross of life. I read recently that 70% of Americans are dissatisfied with their job, and most of that 70% hate their job. And that's just terrible. If you look around you, that's 7 out of 10 people around you. It shouldn't be like that. We look at the work week, Monday through Friday, as, boy, can I just get through this? Because here's the thing, nobody looks forward to Monday, am I right? There's no restaurants named TGIM, Monday, TGI Monday. There's no songs written about Monday. There's songs written, everybody's working for the weekend, but not everybody's working for Monday. We just hope to survive. And I want to say work this morning, if you're writing down a key idea, it's this. Work is not a curse, but write this down. Work is a blessing and a gift from God. It really is. Great careers that we love and thrive in are a blessing and a gift from God. Work doesn't have to be viewed as a curse, something that we need to run away from. The thing is, if you think about our work lives, we have a really good plan for our lives up until age 22. Up until age 22, everybody's plan is pretty simple. Go to school. Age 5, you start school. Hopefully at 17, you're graduating from high school, and then maybe you put in a few years of college after that. But you have a pretty good idea of what's supposed to happen up to age 22, right? After age 65, everybody tends to have a good idea of what's supposed to happen after age 65. After age 65, all of your sports injuries start to take their effect, and you're limping around work at 65, and younger people want your office space. And so at 65, in general, we have this plan to retire. Everybody in our country knows that. You move to Fort Lauderdale or Wickenburg, one of those two places, and you're done, and that's it. But between ages 22 and 65, we don't have a good plan, do we? If we go to college or finish college or we're done with college, then we kind of fall into the first job that hits us. And maybe it becomes a career, maybe it doesn't. We just hope a career finds us. We don't have a great plan for those years from 22 to 65. You can change that. Work, I want to say this morning, is not a curse. It's something that you can love, you can thrive in. Sometimes we look at the Bible and we go, well, in Genesis, Adam was cursed. Work was a curse. And I want to say, not really. If you look at it most correctly, God, we read, worked for 6 days. He loved what he was doing for so much he worked on Saturday. And then he rested, we read in Genesis 2. He rested from his work. And then Adam, of course, was taking care of this Garden of Eden, and he's in this fertile valley, maybe between the Tigris and Euphrates. It's kind of like Napa. Everything grows there. But then he is cursed, and he's told to go east of Eden, out in the desert. And if you read closely in the Bible, it says to a town near the border called Aho. And you know, that's where he was sent, this town just south of Tucson and Aho. And you can't grow anything there. And that was the curse. But good work that we thrive in is a blessing from God. And so I hope by the end of this morning, I hope in your life you start to think about work differently. Work can be exhilarating. Work is a blessing, and you can thrive in it. So here's where I want to start. I want to start with the idea that in your career, I don't know where you are, but practically every person inevitably in their workplace will hit one of three kind of roadblocks. I'll name the first one. Most people, or many people, hopefully you hit a career ceiling. So maybe you're in a job and the only promotion left is to take the owner's spot, and he's not dying anytime soon. So you hit a career ceiling sometimes in just about any job, and you have to look for something new. Sometimes you hit a career, I'll call it a career hiccup. It could be a career setback. It could be a career challenge. Maybe you even lose your job. But you have to make a career decision at that point when there's a problem in your workplace. And then a third, you're inevitably going to hit a career opportunity, hopefully. Maybe a friend from high school says, would you come and be president of my company? Something like that. And here's the thing with all of them. We're never sure what to do when they come. And I want to say you can be excited about those opportunities if, and I'll call it, your career work chest is filled with the right tools. So there's this formula I read. There's a writer by the name of John Acuff. John Acuff has written Christian books, but he just came out with one on business. And it's titled Do-Over. And in Do-Over, he shares this formula. He says there's 4 critical factors, ingredients for everyone to succeed in their career, especially if you're a follower of Jesus Christ. So, and really these principles, when you read 2 Thessalonians, they're there. So he says it's a great career consists of 1, great character, relationships, plus skill, and then it's times a factor, he calls it hustle or hard work. And he says those 4 things, if you have those 4 things taken care of, then you have limitless career opportunities. All right, I want to start where Paul starts as he talks about work. And so the first thing that I want to say, the first, and I'll call it 4 building blocks for every career if you're going to succeed, is the first factor is to bust it, is to work hard. Look at verse 8 with me again. And he writes this. He says, we worked hard day and night so we would not be a burden to you. And he's going, some people are just lazy among you. So maybe you know this, Paul wrote 2 letters to the Thessalonians. Both of the letters he writes about work. So obviously laziness was a problem. And so turn back a page in your Bible or 2 to 1 Thessalonians, to his first letter, chapter 4, verse 11. He says, make it your goal to live quietly, do your work, and earn your own living as we ordered you. Then your way of life will win respect from those outside the church, and you won't have to depend on anyone else for what you need. Move down a few verses to 1 Thessalonians 5:14. Brothers and sisters, we urge you to warn those who are lazy. In other words, work hard. Here's the thing, with hard work, and if you're writing anything down, write this down. With hard work, the factor of hard work, you can accomplish way more than you ever thought you could. When I say that, I think of people in my life that I've known who are hard workers. At the top of that list of men and women that I know who are hard workers, at the top of the list is a friend named Vern Vanderloo. Now, Vern has been at the Grove. I've known him for about 12, 13 years. And I called Vern to ask if I could share his career story. And he says, sure, I'm out of town. Go ahead. And so he's in Seattle or Portland today. And so Vern, when he talks about his story, first of all, you have to picture Vern. Vern is a guy that gets up like at 3:30, 4:30 in the morning. He starts in his son-in-law's backyard flipping tractor tires. So that's Vern. He gets to work at like 5 or 5:30 in the morning. I know that because I've asked for a ride to the airport like at 7. He offices by the airport, and he goes, 7? That's like lunchtime, Palmer. Can't we get an earlier start? And so he starts his day early. Vern works hard, but it's been like that his whole life. You see, Vern, when you hear his story, at 16 years old, he was raised by a single mother, and it was he and his brother. He said they were so poor, he said his mother never bought him a pair of jeans. She sewed his jeans. I said, your mother sewed? Who sews jeans, Vern? He said, well, we were that poor. This wasn't 1920 or 30 during the Great Depression. This was in the 80s. And his mom sewing his jeans. And then he said they lived behind, I'm not making this up, there was a chicken little restaurant called Chicken Licken, and they rented rooms behind the Chicken Licken. That's where he lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So he said, you talk about poor, we were poor. At 16, he said he started to work for a railroad company. He said he worked during the summer. He said his first job for the railroad company was to drive a semi cross country. I said, at 16? He said, yes, he was driving a semi cross country. Well, he kept working as he finished school, and then he went to college, and he kept working for this railroad company. When he turned 25, he started working full-time at about 23. When he turned 25, they made him the president of the company. And then he opened an office here in Phoenix. He said, I officed out of my apartment, and he had 3 employees. 8, 9 years later, he bought the company with his brother. And then now he owns the company. He went from 3 employees to about 100 employees. He said their revenue has increased by like a factor of 30 times. They now have 2 offices in Arizona, 1 in Wyoming, 1 in Utah. They do jobs in Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, New Mexico. You name the state on the West Coast, and they're doing railroad work there. My son went to work for him last summer with his son, and he sent them out near Douglas, Arizona in the summer heat to lay a railroad tie. I said, hey, Vern, can't they like work in the office and file things or something? I said, that's pretty hot. He says, Palmer, they got to learn what hard work is, and he's right. And his son and my son will never forget the summer near Douglas, Arizona. But here's what happens when you work hard, your career takes off. And this is why Paul is writing this letter. He says, some among you are not hard workers. Here's the thing, with the factor of hard work, just about any problem you hit in your career, you can overcome it if you're a hard worker. You really can. Sometimes something as glaring or as jarring as unemployment, we see it, or we look at a new job and we feel fear. If you've ever felt fear because you have an opportunity or you have a job change, I want to give you one word this morning. I want to give you the word of today. The word is resolve. Write that word down. Resolve. So when I say resolve, I think of a young youth pastor friend of mine who was let go from his church he was working at. And he said a wise woman from his church showed up, and she rang his doorbell, and she's holding a goldfish bowl. And she says, I brought you a gift. He says, geez, thank you, but why a goldfish? She said, because I named it for you. He said, well, what's his name? She said, the goldfish's name is Resolve, and that's what you need. And so he kept the goldfish because he needed resolve. If you feel fear, and here's the thing, fear hates hard work. Fear loves people who go to coffee shops and commiserate with others about their job, okay? Fear loves that. People who just talk. Fear hates hard work. The enemy of fear is resolve and hard work. If you're facing a change in your career, then grab onto resolve. Resolve doesn't feel great. Do you know what resolve feels like? Resolve feels like I'm gonna throw up. That's what it feels like, because you're so afraid. Resolve feels like I'm gonna cry right now. Resolve feels like at 3 a.m, I can't sleep. But if you grab onto resolve and you start working hard at what you do best, you can overcome the biggest challenges in your career. Stephen Pressfield has written this quirky short book on business titled The War of Art. And he writes this about fear. He says, the amateur believes they must first overcome fear, Then they can do their work. The professional knows that fear can never be overcome. They know there's no such thing as a fearless warrior or a dread-free artist. You know, fear is always there, but if you have resolve, you can work, and hard work, you get past that. Sometimes when we face a challenge in our career, we just want to quit and give up, all right? That's what a lot of people do. If we face something really difficult, we just want to quit and give up. But Winston Churchill said something I'll never forget. I didn't hear it myself. I just read it. He was, during World War II, you know, he was the Prime Minister of England, and Churchill always had a hat, top hat, a cigar, and a cane. So he gets invited to speak at the commencement ceremony for Oxford. And he sits down, and finally they invite him to the podium, and he gets up and he goes to the podium, he puts a cane down, takes off his hat, holds a cigar, and takes it out of his mouth, and he said, I have 3 words for you students, you young men and women. 3 words. He says, never give up. And then he started to sit down like the speech was over. Then he came back. He wasn't. He said again, never give up. And then he sat down. And then put his hat back on in the cane, and he was gone. $5,000 honorarium, and he was gone. I don't know what they paid him. But his point is brilliant, that if you are coming out of college, for example, if you're making a career change, don't give up. You know, there's something that God has given you to do. And the first ingredient in doing it well is to simply work really hard. All right, let's go back to 2 Thessalonians 3 and look at verse 9 with me. And I want to say next, Paul writes this, we wanted to give you an example to follow. So he says, we worked very hard day and night. Why is that? Because we wanted to give you an example to follow. And then he goes on to talk about other people. He says, but some are meddling in other people's business. But he says, follow our example. Paul knows that he has a reputation that people should follow. The issue here is character, and Paul says character is a critical ingredient. He says, you saw our character when we were here, so watch what we did. They say that character gets you your first gig, and then, let me start over. They say that friendships or relationships get you your first gig. Skill, your ability, gets you your second gig, but character gives you a career doing what you love doing. When you lack character, think about this with me. When you lack character, people stop trusting you. When you lack character, coworkers stay away from you. They don't want to share projects with you. When you lack character and you lack integrity, you may have some clients for a while, but as soon as they find a cheaper option or another option, they jump because you can't be trusted. Conversely, if you have great character, you will keep clients or customers for years and years and years. You'll have friends that recommend you, to just about any job that you want because you have character. Here's a few keys that I have here to being a person who protects their reputation and has a great reputation that people want. So the first one is always keep your word. If you tell someone, I'm going to call you back, call them back. If you promise a delivery date or if you promise a price, then honor that, even if it costs you money. The next one that I have is be responsive. Answer emails, answer phone calls. Some people, in your work life, those who always delete your emails or never answer them, you quit calling them, don't you? All right, here's another one. Fix mistakes right away. There's a book titled Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me. Well, we all make mistakes, but if you do, own up to it and then get it right. Next one that I have is treat coworkers and customers with respect. If you are gracious and treat people right, they want you around, but people who have a great reputation and character are gracious to others. And then finally, I have work with excellence. I hope that when people know your work and what you do, they see this high level, this great standard. And that's why Paul says this in 1 Corinthians. He's writing the church in Corinth, chapter 10, verse 31. He says, whatever you do it for the glory of God. Even the small things do with excellence. Everything you do, think, will this bring glory to God? Your career is meant to bring glory to God. I've heard it said that growing a lasting reputation, growing great character is like planting a grove. We're in a grove, a pistachio grove right now, because great character takes time. Do you know how long it takes if you plant a tree for it to have fruit or to have nuts? You plant a sapling, and then you fertilize it, and you water it, and you till it, and then you just wait. And you wait. You wait for about 10 years before you see your first nut. Do you know when they say the right time to plant a tree is? If you want fruit off of it, like an orange tree? The right time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. That's what they say. Do you know when the second best time to plant a tree? Right now, today. And it's like that with character. You can't get up tomorrow morning and say, okay, I want a great reputation. No, reputations happen with time. Reputations happen with you keeping your word. Reputations happen with you following through on promises you made. Reputation takes days, months, year after year after year, and then character builds. It's a slow burn. It's a very slow grind, but it's critical. And people notice. If you're wondering, is there a tree in your character grove that's missing, then can I encourage you, maybe ask a friend or a coworker out to lunch. Sit down with them and then say, is there a piece in my career, is there an integrity piece missing? Is there a character piece that I'm weak on? And then listen to them, because maybe they'll say, you know what? You tend to be overcritical of others. Or maybe they'll say, you know what, you don't do so good at following through on things, so why don't you do that better? Or they may say, I've noticed you have a temper. Could you watch your temper and how you talk to people? And let an honest person, an honest friend speak into your life if you want to grow this right grove of character for your life. So that's a second building block. Here's a third building block that we read of from this passage in Second Thessalonians, and I've titled it, Stay Connected. And so Paul says this, we hear that some among you are living idle lives, refusing to work and meddling in other people's business. Listen to how the Living Bible says it. It says, we hear that some among you are idle and disruptive. They are not busy. They are busybodies. How do you like that? I love the honesty there. Some people, instead of growing relationships, they burn relationships. They destroy relationships in work. Some people are just wired that way. And Paul's point is, grow relationships. If you want a career that lasts a long time in doing what you love, you want all the options out there, then become what Malcolm Gladwell calls a connector. Start connecting with people. I was driving a week and a half ago from Portland back to Phoenix with my son Byron, and we're coming through California, and I had called my cousin. He lives in Chico. His name's David Chinchen, and I said, David, hey, we're thinking about stopping by. But I said, you're 30 minutes off the 5. I don't know if I have time or not. He said, you better stop by. He said, his son, my second cousin, Chase, he said, Chase just had a baby last night. They're still in the hospital. So we turned off the 5 and went down 99 and stopped in Chico at the hospital with David. And I get to hold my cousin's baby. He wouldn't stop crying, so I gave him back. But so we get to visit with him, and I'm asking Chase, hey, how's your job coming? I knew that he had just started his own business as an electrician. He had worked for someone else, but then he went out on his own. And he said, man, Palmer, he said, I have more work than I can handle. He's installing solar panels like crazy. And then his dad chimes in. He says, Palmer, he says, Chase is doing phenomenal. He's right. He has so much work, he can't keep up with it. He said the problem is he needs to learn to bid his jobs better. He said the first job he bid a few months ago, he underbid it. So my cousin, his father, he said, I was out there trenching for him for 5 days for free so he could finish on budget. He said at the end of 5 days, he said, I told Chase, that's his son. He said, I told Chase, he said, Chase, you talk to the customer too much. You know, you've got the next job to get to. Don't talk to the customer so much. But here's the thing, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. What I didn't say to David, I said, David, he's wired just like you. David and Chase have never met a stranger. And you know what? Chase is a connector. His dad's a connector. You can go to most places in the world and nobody knows the name Chinchen. If you go to Chico, you can ask anyone on the street, do you know a Chinchen? And they all know the half a dozen Chinchens because David's a connector and Chase is a connector. And Chase is making friends as he's an electrician. He will never not have work because he's a connector. I have a Malcolm Gladwell in his book, I think Outliers, talks about connectors. Connectors are people who build networks of friendships. And I have a list here of how to stay connected, what connectors or what their qualities are. The first one I have is connectors listen. Have you ever noticed you've tried to talk to some people and their eyes are glazed over? Or have you seen people texting? Some of you are sitting in meetings, I know you, and you try to text under the table. We know what's happening, that's just rude. And can I say, when you go to lunch with someone, just turn your phone upside down. And now, Samsung is making a phone where you can read it on the side. That's just horrible. So listen to people. Take connectors, listen to this. Connectors take every meeting, every opportunity that comes along, connectors take them. A next one, because they never get tired of connecting. Connectors show appreciation. Someone takes them to Joyride Tacos. Hey, thank you for the Joyride Tacos. They send a text or they write a note. They'll even take Post-it notes and write encouraging messages to their coworkers like this one I saw this week. Have a nice day. I saw this one on TV, on the news. Nobody saw this? It's okay. A few people. All right. There were some escaped convicts and they left this when they escaped. Have a nice day. Connectors are generous, and connectors, finally, are gracious to others. They care about people around them. They genuinely care, and they are gracious. So that's just a few thoughts. Here's what Paul says in 1 Thessalonians. Paul, when you read the Bible, you realize quickly Paul was a true connector. One, he was visiting every church that he could and every town and city that he could. And then finally, when he couldn't travel anymore, he gets sent to prison. He keeps writing them. And here's what he says to the church in Thessalonica. He says, we always thank God for all of you. 1 Thessalonians 1:2. Mentioning you in our prayers, we continually remember before God our Father. So Paul is one of those who keeps connecting with people. I would just say that's one of the key ingredients to a career that God can use and honors him. Here's the last one that I have, is be brilliant at what you do. All of us have skill and ability, and here's how Paul says it. He says, as for the rest of you, verse 13 in chapter 3, brothers and sisters, never get tired of doing good. Never get tired of doing what you do best. My challenge here is you are born with and you've developed a skill or an ability. My challenge to you is become the best in your field at that skill or ability. I was with Erwin McManus at Mosaic Church, and this was a couple of months ago, and we're in a staff meeting, and he was saying to his staff, he says, your goal in whatever area of ministry you're in is to be the best in the world, not just in LA. He says, my goal is to be the best speaker in the world. He said, I don't know if I am, but I'm working on it. And that's my invitation to you, is that if God has given you a skill or an ability, then grow it. And you want every once in a while, you want your coworkers and people that you work with to see that you are gifted. I have this quote here. I heard someone say, that was legitness. I don't know if this is a word even or a term, but every once in a while you want your coworkers to say, that was legitness. This actually comes from a video my son showed me this week from Vine. So I'm going to, they're in escape.
That was legitness.
See? By the way, this Vine, it'll just keep looping all afternoon. We're going to leave it for a while. But wouldn't it be awesome? You have your coworkers saying, that was legitness. I know that's not even a word, but that was legitness, Bob. How'd you do that? That was a brilliant idea. That was legitness. That's you they should be talking about. So that's my invitation there, is that God has given you a certain set of skills and talents and abilities, and sometimes we ignore them. Can I say, go to school on what you do best. Become the best in your field. You can. Find someone to mentor you that you can grow under. You really have the ability to do that. Sometimes you'll see someone with an incredible talent. Have you ever watched this? But then they don't do it. They do something else. I remember years ago, I used to live in Chicago, and I was a fan of a basketball team that had a great player. I don't want to mention names. He was number 23, played for a team called the Bulls. And one day he said, you know what? I'm tired of playing basketball. He said this, I think I'm going to be a baseball player. And it didn't work, you know. He moved to Birmingham, Alabama, the bottom of the world, played for the Barons. Who's heard of them? It spiraled. You want to say, Michael, just go back, play basketball. There's another basketball player. Again, we don't want to mention names. Number 23 plays for a team called the Cavaliers. And, you know, he's maybe the best that's ever played the game, but now he wants to be a movie actor. And I've seen the previews, and I want to say, no, LeBron, just go back to basketball. The name of the movie, I'm not making this up, it's coming out in the next couple of weeks, is titled Trainwreck, all right? I'm not predicting anything here, but it may be, you know, an omen of what's coming, but I haven't seen it. God has given you a set of skills and ability. Take that and then grow it and become the best at it. And be brilliant at it. You really can. So we started with this formula that John Acuff gave us. I want to end with that just so it sticks in your mind and you take it home with you. We talked about character and how your reputation matters. And then we talked about connecting with people. And then we talked about your skills and your abilities that God has given you, this gifts, this set of talent. And then you multiply all of that by Paul's words on work hard, bust it, hustle. You can't succeed in life without working hard. And then when you do that, you end up with these limitless career opportunities. Can I end by challenging you with this? That whatever job, whatever workplace God has put you, whatever career you're in, can I invite you this morning to give it to God? Maybe you've never done that. Maybe you've never said, God, my work is to you. Maybe you've never said, my office is part of your kingdom, and God, it's yours. Help me to thrive and flourish there. And so I want to invite you. You don't have to, but I invite you this morning to pray and say, God, I'm giving my career, my work, my talents, my skills to you.